Um, because being down here, obviously, Miami being 5-4, us being 3-6 right now, it's a little weird because it doesn't have that same feel as those Miami Florida State games that you talked about. I mean, where you're talking about a period of, that 20 season period from 83 to 2002, where out of those 20 seasons, Miami and Florida State played for the national title. I want to say it was about 16 times out of those, 15, 16 times out of that, somewhere around there. So it's a little weird to see the teams combining with 10 losses by the time they're playing. But at the same point, it's FSU Miami. It's the game. There's a reason Miami should, on paper, convincingly beat us, but they're only a 3-point favorite. There's a reason for it. Everyone knows when these teams play, it's going to be the game. It's the rivalry. I could argue it's the greatest rivalry in college football. We could have that discussion because of what it's meant. It's Florida State Miami. They're coming up to our house this week. Bring it on.
Okay. Greatest rivalry in college football.
I mean, we haven't had much success in that house this season, but let's see what happens this week.
3-point favorite, and that's it. Okay.
I can see why that is, because with all due respect to Miami, and let's just be honest, they're on a 3-game winning streak. They're playing very good offensive football right now. Tyler Van Dyke is playing great offensive football as the quarterback since just taking over as the starter. Their defense is suspect, though. Their defense is giving up points. Luckily, their offense is bailing them out on plenty of occasions. And I think the question you have to ask is, are they looking at and saying Florida State is a better offense than Georgia Tech, a Georgia Tech team that put 30 points on them last week? That's where the question comes into play right there. So if you're Florida State, you have to look at that Georgia Tech game and say, okay, Georgia Tech put 30 on them. Georgia Tech's defense gave up 33. Right now, I would argue we're a slightly better team than Georgia Tech. Do we have enough?
Yeah, it's a great question because there are certain ways in which you could see where Miami should be a solid favorite, but there are other angles to it. Most notably for me is the way Florida State performed at Clemson 2 weeks ago. And certainly Clemson's challenged offensively, but at Clemson against that defense, which is the best defense in the league, and that game should have been Florida State's. If they perform in that range, they certainly have a really good chance of winning this game.
The problem with that comes back is on the flip side of that, and we'll talk about this over the course of at least the next hour with the Florida State section, is the regression. You have to say that Florida State regressed a little bit from that Clemson game this past week against NC State. If this had been reverse the games, if we're playing Miami on the 6th and then NC State, then maybe I would be have a little bit more confidence in Florida State. But seeing a regression, obviously, yes, Jordan Travis did not start. He was out with the flu. Mackenzie Milton came in and played admirably. We'll say. But that's where my concern is right now with Florida State. Is Florida State looked like they regressed a little bit against NC State. You're heading into a game not just regressing, but also against, like I said, a Miami team who is finally hot and a Miami team who has hopes. Miami can still win the Coastal Division. They need a Penn loss and a Virginia loss and win out against a very favorable schedule in the month of November for Miami. Miami has everything to play for. Essentially, for Florida State, you have one thing left. You have to win out just to make a bowl game. And so that's what Florida State needs to say is, does Florida State have the heart to say we're going to beat Miami and then beat Boston College in Florida to become bowl eligible?
So go back 1 week to the NC State loss, 28-14, as this projects to what could happen in Tallahassee this week. You mentioned Mackenzie Milton. He's not going to start this week, but he, of course, is always one play away. The numbers would suggest he played okay. He played all right, but not great. Didn't push the ball downfield, 233 yards on 22 completions, a 50% passer, 1 touchdown, 1 pick.
And my concern to go along with that is if you're going to have your backup quarterback in, your running game needs to pick up the slack. And our running game for the second straight week, I'll give you against Clemson, like you talked about, Clemson's defense was the best defense we were going to play over the last 5 games of the season. All due respect, sorry Miami, sorry Florida, sorry NC State. Clemson was in. So I'll give you the fact that we got 38 yards against Clemson. But our numbers against NC State were unacceptable if you are going to come out with a win. If the running game shows up, maybe Florida State has a shot there. But you cannot have a backup quarterback and your running game suffering. That's how Florida State has to beat Miami. The one chance Florida State can have to beat Miami is if the running game can pick back up. Because Jordan Travis isn't going to beat him with his arm. He'll play admirably as well because he's going to start the game. But the running game has to return to where it was the first half of the season.
Yeah, there were many weeks we commented on here that Jashaun Corbin should have been receiving the ball more. You know, he was having 10 and 12 carry games with 100+ yards, 8-9 yards per carry in most of these games. But the last 2 weeks, yes. And I've got to look at the offensive line, one of your favorite pet projects there, looking at the offensive line, because I know that Jashaun Corbin didn't forget how to run the ball. So this is the NC State and the Clemson defensive fronts dominating up front.
But this is also what we talked about when on October 23rd at about, let's say, between 4 and 5 p.m., everything was going in Florida State's favor. Florida State had just killed UMass, 3-4 on a 3-game winning streak. Our two rivals were suffering. By that point, Miami had lost 2 straight games. They were 2-4. Florida had lost to LSU. They had lost to Kentucky in 2 games they could have won. They were about to lose to Georgia. So things were going good for Florida State. And we talked about this, though. The problem with it was at that point, after the UMass game, the UMass and Syracuse were games we were supposed to win. North Carolina was an upset, getting the win on the road. That's fine. But I think there was a little bit of confidence, of cockiness, I think would be the best way to say it, in the fact that everyone thought, okay, everything is finally turned around. No, you're playing Clemson. You're playing NC State. You're playing Miami. You still have that game at Florida at the end of the year. This is the hardest part of our schedule. And right now we're 0-2 in our hardest part of our schedule. This is why you could look back at the start of the season. This is why the Jacksonville State loss was so important. This is why the Louisville loss is so important. If you win one of those 2 games, let's say you beat Jacksonville State like you were supposed to, you're 4-5 at this game right now, and you only need to go 2-1 at the end of the regular season. I like those chances of winning 2 of our final 3 games a lot more than winning our final 3 games. And that's my concern right now, is that we came in way too confident after the UMass game. I'm going to call him out, Logan Robinson. He picked us on NoleGameDay.com to beat Clemson. And I told you guys, Clemson's losses were better than our wins. And that's our problem right now. Now you look at a Miami team, who Miami's lost to a North Carolina team that we beat. They lost to, a Virginia team on a field goal that went off the goalpost. They lost to a Michigan State team who up until last week was an undefeated, top 6 or 7 ranked team in the country. And they lost to Alabama. Their losses, once again, we're playing a team whose losses are better than our wins. And that's the problem right now. If we come in with a cocky attitude like we did against Clemson, Miami is going to dog stomp us in our own house.
The only thing I'll say about that, Jason, would be, how do we know that Florida State went into the Clemson game with a cocky attitude? They played well, defensively especially, and they had the game in their hands with 4 minutes left.
I think you have to look at it from the fact of, not so much, I don't think the players came with a cocky attitude. I think the fan base, I think is the way I'm saying it. The fan base, people who cover the team, came in with a cocky attitude of saying, okay, this has turned around. We had commentators on here after the North Carolina game, after the UMass game, saying we were going to finish the season 8-4, finish everything perfect. Yes, in a perfect world, me as an alumni of the school, I would love Florida State to win their final 3 games, finish the season 6-6. I'm being a realist. We were 3-4 at that point. Would I have loved Florida State to win their last 5 games? Of course. But you have to be realistic about the fact of where our last part of the season was. We talked about this at the start of the year. Florida State had to go into the Clemson game 5-2 to be comfortable enough to make a bowl game, looking at that last 5 games of the season. Before the season, Clemson, at Clemson, NC State, Miami at home, at Boston College in the cold of Chestnut Hill, Massachusetts in the middle of November, and then at Florida. Yes, the Florida game looks a little bit easier now, but Florida is still a very talented team. Miami had hopes of being a 10-win team this season. They're not going to get there, but they are still a very good team. Boston College has started to go down a little bit, but they're coming off a big win against Virginia Tech last week, and maybe that's going to help pick them up.
Well, they've got their quarterback back.
Obviously,
Bill
and that's going to help them. Right,
Yep.
and then we have to go to that next week. That's where I'm saying about the overconfidence is people were looking at the moment. People were living in that moment and not looking at the future. And the future right now says Florida State needs to be prepared for a fourth straight losing season. I hate to say that. I don't want to say that. I pray to God I will be inside Bogdan Field. I'll be on the sideline, filming this game on Saturday. I will be repping the Noles inside and praying for a Florida State win. I'm just being realistic that if you're telling me Florida State has to go 3-0 just to become bowl eligible, I don't think they can do it.
Yeah, the odds are stacked against them, no question. And if they don't get there, then they may finish. You do the math at 5-7 if they get one of the last three. Somebody here picked them 5-7.
You picked them 5-7. I picked 7-5, but once again, I'm a biased alumni. Ronan Jones is sober enough to donate 10 euros. Thank you very much.
Ronan, isn't it good to have Ronan back?
It's good to have Ronan back. It's good to have a typical Cane fan who didn't go to UM. It's good to have their fan base is out here. It's good to see them here. I can't wait to talk to Cam, a Cane supporter who actually went to UM. That's going to be exciting. They're a rarity. So,
well, Ronan, the super chat contribution here, we appreciate so much. You know that.